Okay, well, welcome back. Today's segment, we're actually going to talk about making pizza. In the United States alone, over 3 billion pizzas are delivered every year, and Super Bowl Sunday is one of the top 5 delivery pizza days ever throughout the year. And that means that the likelihood is you're not going to get your pizza on time, it's going to be cold, you're going to have to wait hours, and everybody, of course, wants it delivered at halftime. So what we're going to do is show you how easy it is to actually make it at home. Now, I know most people get a little nervous when you talk about, yeast and bread doughs and all that stuff, but this is really simple. And if you just take the time and energy and just a few minutes, you're going to have wonderful pizza that you can serve to just about anybody. Okay, so what do we need? First thing we want to do is we need a full cup of lukewarm water. And I say lukewarm because what you want is just lukewarm, just barely warm to your fingertips. Okay, that's lukewarm. And I'm going to put a thermometer in there to show you exactly that you can hit it right on the spot. You have to be very careful with the liquid in this recipe. You want to make sure you don't go over in terms of the liquid. So it's the only thing you have to measure really carefully. Now let's see what the temperature is under 100 degrees. Yeast is basically, it's a single-celled organism. Basically, it's a single-cell fungi. Okay, and what it does is because it's a living organism, you can kill it. And that's where, if you don't pay attention, where most people who cook with yeast get in trouble. Because it's living, if it's too cold, it'll go dormant. If it's too hot, it'll die. So what we want is that lukewarm water to be between 90 and 100 degrees. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to show you how to actually proof the yeast. Again, very simple process. And I'm going to do it in a separate bowl for the moment. So you take that lukewarm water, and then what you want to do is add the yeast. Now there's 2 ways to get it. You can get it in bulk, and I happen to have a spoon that measures exactly what I want, or you can get these little packets. And what you're looking for is 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast. Okay, one of these packets is 2 1/4 teaspoons. But I'm going to take it out because it makes so much dough over time. And again, 2 1/4, pop it in there, find my handy dandy whisk, whatever I did with that. Oh, here it is. And I just want to stir that up a little bit. Because yeast is living, what it does is it converts sugar and starch into alcohol, which of course we use for beer, or carbon dioxide. And that carbon dioxide is the bubbles that are going to help our bread rise. And so in order to help that along a little bit, I'm going to add a teaspoon of sugar, and I'm also going to add 1/8 of a cup of flour. And that basically is 2 tablespoons. Okay, and that will give it the food that it needs. More importantly, what it does is proof it, and proofing just means that it's actually alive and it's going to allow our bread to rise. And that's a really important step. So we're going to leave that sit now for about 3 or 4 minutes. That's it. Okay, well, you can tell our yeast is starting to proof. If you look closely, you'll see that there's little bubbles. Things are starting to move around a little bit. Okay, if you take a whiff of it, you can smell it. It smells like bread. You can smell the yeast. It's just a great, wonderful smell. So, but you can see the difference, the discoloration on top. That's when you know that you're ready to go. All right, so now let's get our pizza together. What I want is 1 more cup of water, but this time I want cold water, as cold as you can get it. I want to make sure that you focus on measurement of the water. You don't want too much water here, so the only 2 things you really have to worry about measuring is the 1 cup of lukewarm water and then the 1 cup of cold water. Make sure it's no more than a cup. So let's just take a quick gander. We're right there on a cup. And what I want to do with that is I have 1.5 tablespoons of kosher salt. If you want to use regular table salt, you can, but just cut it down to a tablespoon. I'm going to take 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and I'm going to want to stir that around to dissolve it. Just make sure when you start off with your yeast that you don't put the salt in with the yeast, because the salt will kill it. Just mix that around. You'll see it all dissolve, which is great. And we're ready to go. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to take let's take this off here for a moment. Okay, as we go over here. We're going to take our yeast solution. We're going to drop all that in. And I'm going to get my spoon here to make sure we get all of that out of there. Make sure all that yeast gets into the bowl. And we're going to take our flour. We have 5 1/2 cups of bread flour. And the reason we want to use bread flour is it has a much higher protein content than all-purpose flour. If you're using all-purpose flour, the protein content is somewhere between 9 and 12%. Bread flour has somewhere between 12 and 14%, and it's going to give you that strength, structure, elasticity that we need so that when you bite into a nice crusty chunk of bread or a nice pizza crust, you're going to feel it, you're going to know it. Now if you use all-purpose flour, you may have to use a little bit more flour, anywhere up to half a cup to another cup of flour. But all you want to do, again, it's very simple. Let's just dump all of that in at one time. Make sure we get it all in the bowl. No big deal. We're going to take our salt mixture along with our water and olive oil. We're just going to dump that in as well. And we're going to put it here underneath our mixer. Now if you don't have a bread mix, a mix master or whatever, you can do this by hand. Same concept. You throw it in a big bowl and just pull it all together with your hands, but I'm not going to do it that way. Pop it up, put it on the lowest setting, and we're going to let it go until you see all of it sort of incorporate into one very coarse looking ball. And then once we get that coarse looking ball, we're just going to let it rest for 2 minutes, no more than that. This way everything sort of gets absorbed, make sure everything has a little bit of liquid in it. But that takes probably 1 to 2 minutes to get to the consistency that you want. But again, if you don't have the mix master, you can put it all in one giant bowl. You could have left it right in there, poured everything in, and just mix it all by hand until it all comes together. And then you'll have to do a little kneading on the board, a little bit of flour, just knead it for 4 or 5 minutes, and you're in pretty good shape.